I was 28 the spring I decided to go on a solo camping trip into Arapahoe National Forest. To this day, I don't know what possessed me to push past every warning, every red flag, and every voice that told me it was a bad idea. Maybe it was stupidity disguised as independence. My coworkers thought I was crazy. Mountain lions, they warned me. Black bears. Creeps out there. It was always the same. A woman shouldn't go out alone. You're asking for trouble. I'd roll my eyes and laugh. I wasn't some reckless teenager looking for a thrill. I'd taken self-defense classes. I kept pepper spray clipped inside my bag. I was organized, disciplined, cautious. More than that, I was tired. So damn tired. Of the city's noise, the fluorescent lit office hallways, and people's fake small talk. I wanted silence. I wanted to test myself. Arapahoe had been on my list for a long time. Remote, high up in the Rockies, beautiful but not so remote that it was off limits. I spent nights hunched over online maps, scanning trip reports, marking coordinates of isolated spots that were still legal to use. Eventually, I found one. A site tucked off a dirt road near Silver Creek, about 9,200 feet elevation. Surrounded by thick pines, cut off from the main trail and brushed by the cold stream. There were even massive boulders on the eastern side, like silent guards. It was perfect. The drive out was gorgeous, the mountains shifting from brown foothills into jagged granite teeth as I wound up the highway. The air thinned, the forests thickened, and my cell service blinked out one bar at a time. When the last signal disappeared, I told myself it felt freeing. But the truth? A small shiver of unease went down my back. No service meant no lifeline. I parked my car off the side road near Silver Creek. It was just before 5 in the evening. Shadows already stretched long across the dirt as the sun slid down the western ridge. The air slapped me with its sharp cold. My breath puffed out in clouds as I hauled my gear. I could hear the stream through the trees. Steady, whispering. The clearing was smaller than I imagined, barely enough room for my 2-person tent, but it had a strange intimacy to it. The ground was soft with old pine needles and leaves. No voices, no cars, not even a distant hum of life. Just nothing. I set up quickly, methodically. Tent staked, sleeping bag unfurled. Food sealed in the bear canister, tied off to a tree 40 feet away. By the time I boiled water for ramen, the light was already collapsing. The sky dimmed into gray, then blue-black. My little campfire sputtered and hissed. And then, the silence came. It was pleasant. Just the crack of the fire and the lazy trickle of the stream. But as the last of the daylight disappeared, it started to feel heavy, like a pressure on my ears. The forest was too quiet. By the time I zipped myself inside the tent, I felt safe but also small. A cocoon of nylon between me and endless darkness. I checked the zipper twice, shoved my flashlight and pepper spray beside me, and buried myself in my sleeping bag. I told myself I wasn't scared, that I was strong enough to do this, that I was proud. But sometime after midnight, I woke up with a feeling I couldn't explain. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't the cold. It was wrong. It was just a sound, like something scratch. I froze, my eyes wide open in the pitch dark. The sound came again, like something sharp was being pulled along the fabric of my tent. My heart thudded in my chest, and I told myself it was the wind. Just the wind. Or maybe a branch brushing the side. Then came the breathing. Low, harsh, human. It was right outside the thin nylon wall, inches from my head. I could smell it. Sour sweat, stale smoke, something feral and unwashed. I stopped breathing, terrified the sound of my lungs would give me away. My eyes locked on the fabric beside me as it bulged slightly. A hand pressed against the tent wall, fingers flexing, testing. And then the sound shifted. The scraping wasn't random. It was steady, deliberate. A knife cutting into my tent. A sound like cutting a tent cloth with knife. Slow, careful. The blade slicing a slit just above the zipper. My body shook under the sleeping bag. My hand shot out and found the flashlight and pepper spray, cold metal in my grip. My only weapons. The cutting stopped. The breathing grew louder. The silhouette of a hand hovered outside, twitching against the nylon. That was it. I had seconds left before they were inside. "Get the hell away!" I screamed, voice cracking. "I'm calling emergency!" Knife sound stopped instantly. The breathing went silent. For 3 seconds, there was nothing, no sound at all. Then, crunch, crunch, footsteps. Heavy, fast, tearing through the leaves as the intruder bolted away. But they didn't leave. The steps circled, faded, then reappeared on the other side of the trees. Slow now, creeping. They were pacing the edges of my camp, watching, calculating. I clutched the pepper spray so tight my fingers hurt. I didn't dare move, didn't dare unzip the tent. Sometimes stopping for minutes. Sometimes brushing against the bear canister, rattling it just enough to make my blood freeze. I swear at one point they leaned close and exhaled against the tent again, just to let me know they were still there. In that nightmare haze, I remembered the satellite communicator I had shoved into the tent pocket. My last ace. My hands fumbled for it in the dark, shaking so badly I almost dropped it. My thumb found the emergency button, and the device vibrated, a tiny green light blinking back at me. My coordinates were sent. Someone knew I was here. All I could do was wait. The circling went on. Minutes later, a crackle of leaves to the east. My muscles ached from staying frozen. My teeth chattered with cold, with fear, with fury at my own stupidity. I thought about bolting for the car, but the forest was endless, black, and if they wanted me, they'd get me before I ever made it. So I stayed, trapped, listening to the nightmare walk in circles around me. Minutes later, a forest ranger burst into my camp with a flashlight. I scrambled out of the bag and unzipped the tent. I shouted for help. Then the voice boomed from the loudspeaker, calling my name, scanning everything. His eyes landed on the slit in my tent, the knife marks etched into the nylon. He knelt down, touched the cuts, then glanced at me with something heavy in his face. "You're lucky," he said. "That quick thinking probably saved your life." He was right. The boot prints in the soft dirt proved it. They were real. Whoever circled me was flesh and blood. They were gone now, but not far. We waited for another ranger before they walked me out. My legs were rubber, my chest still hammering. I never went camping alone again. I used to think I was tough, that I was prepared, that the wilderness was dangerous because of animals, weather, terrain. But I was wrong. The real danger was something different. And that night in Arapahoe taught me the difference in the most brutal way imaginable. That was the time when my life cracked. The divorce papers were signed. 3 days later, my boss, his tie crooked, his face avoiding mine, told me the company was going in a different direction. That was corporate lingo for throwing me in the trash. My marriage was gone. My career was gone. That night, I stared at the walls of my empty apartment. That was when I realized there was nothing tethering me to Denver anymore. No reason to pretend I belonged among the buzz of traffic and office chatter. I opened my laptop, went to a rental site, and found a long-term cabin near Salida, Colorado. I booked it for 2 months. I'd always thought of myself as tough, practical, someone who could handle whatever life threw my way. But I was also a person who carried her wounds like stones in her pockets, dragging me under. I thought maybe solitude would strip away the noise and force me to face what I'd been running from. Or maybe I just wanted to disappear where no one could find me. The first month wasn't really alone. I met up with a group of seasoned climbers from an online forum. 4 men, 2 women, all older, all weathered by mountains and storms. They shook my hand, joked about snoring and freeze-dried meals, and taught me things I didn't know I needed. Mike, with his salt and pepper beard, showed me how to read stars when the compass needle spins. Sarah taught me how to build a splint out of branches and duct tape. They pushed me to lead hikes, to trust my bearings, to use my memory instead of leaning on GPS. At night, around the fire, I felt small and safe under the Colorado sky, stars spilling like frost across the black. I listened more than I spoke. I absorbed. I learned. I felt like maybe I could belong somewhere again, if only in this rough wilderness. But the day came when they packed up and left for jobs and families. They hugged me, scribbled numbers, promised to keep in touch. I had chosen solitude, and now I was about to get it. I hiked deep into San Isabel, loaded down with food, gear, the old tent I'd had since college, and a stubborn belief that I was strong enough for this. No cell signal, no roads nearby, no trails. I wanted real silence, real aloneness. I picked a rise above a creek and pitched camp, a clear view of the valley. The first 3 days were bliss. My mornings were slow. Coffee brewed over a fire, the world glittering with frost, my breath puffing white clouds into the dawn. I hiked, I gathered water, I practiced knots and fire-starting tricks. At night, the forest sounded like a living, breathing animal around me. It was lonely, but in a good way. Day 4 shattered that. I woke to scraping, a sound like something heavy dragging. I froze, heart pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. I told myself it was an animal, a raccoon, a deer, anything normal. But in the morning, the damage was obvious. My bear canister was 30 feet from the tree I'd hung it in, its lid scarred with deep scratches. My food scattered across the ground like a thief had rifled through my life. Oatmeal ripped open, jerky torn, even my plastic spoon missing. Something had tried hard to break in. I cleaned up, muttering curses into the empty air, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I tied it down tighter that night, hoisted it higher, double-knotted every cord. I even strung little bells around the perimeter of my tent like some desperate medieval defense. That night, the noises came back. Louder, twigs snapping, heavy footfalls circling just outside the light of my fire. My throat went dry as ash. I told myself it was still just wildlife, just curious, just passing through. But then the voices started. Then they grew sharper. Someone calling. My blood iced. I sat rigid in my sleeping bag, knife gripped so tight my hand cramped. By the next night, there was no pretending. They were deliberate, familiar. My ex-wife's cold, serrated tone, the way she'd spit my weaknesses back in my face during the worst arguments. "You'll never make it on your own," she hissed from the trees. Then my boss's flat disappointment, calling me unreliable, slow, a failure. Until I was whispering back like a lunatic, "Leave me alone." "Shut up. I'm not going back." I stopped eating much. My eyes burned from lack of sleep. I slept in my boots, knife under my pillow. By the 6th night, exhaustion had ground me down to bone and nerve. My fire was my only shield. I built it high, fed it constantly, sparks spitting into the black. And then I saw 50 yards away. A figure stood at the edge of the trees, backlit by firelight. A dark silhouette, tall, swaying, staring straight at me. My lungs locked. My body went rigid, waiting for it to move, for it to come. But it just stood there, watching. Something inside me broke. Logic, survival, planning. All of it shattered under panic. I ripped open my tent, grabbed only my headlamp and half a water bottle, and ran. I left everything behind. My bag, my food, my sleeping bag, everything. Roots grabbed at my ankles. My breath was fire in my throat. Behind me, the voices chased, laughing, mocking. I don't remember how long I ran, but my headlamp flickered and died. Eventually, the trees thinned. I crashed into a clearing, collapsed against a fence line, body convulsing with exhaustion. My vision tunneled. The last thing I remember was moonlight. When I woke, birds were singing. The sky was pale. My clothes were torn, blood crusted on my palms. And then I heard a man's voice. "Hey, you all right there?" I blinked up at him. A farmer in a dusty jacket, boots worn through, a thermos in his hand. His name was Jim. He led me gently back to his farmhouse, sat me down, poured coffee into a mug. I tried to explain. Someone stalking me. Jim listened without laughing. Then he said something that chilled me more than anything I'd heard in those woods. My nephew went through the same. Spent too long alone out there. Convinced himself the trees were talking. Out here, your own mind can turn on you real fast. It was like ice water poured down my spine. Later, Jim drove me into town. I bought a bus ticket to Denver that same day and booked therapy that same night. I spent months unraveling myself in that office. The more I talked, the more I realized how badly I'd been running, not just from people, but from myself. It happened last summer when I was 34. The idea started festering in my head months before. I'd been working a dead-end desk job, scrolling between YouTube survivalists and Netflix documentaries on Everest climbs and Alaskan bushcraft. I could do that. I'm tougher than I look. I'm smarter than most of those idiots getting rescued. My confidence swelled into arrogance. I'd done little weekend hikes, a few state park camping trips, nothing that would make me a seasoned outdoors woman. But I convinced myself I was ready for the real thing. I liked the danger of it. The warnings plastered all over their website. Don't go solo. Carry bear spray. Be prepared for sudden weather. No cell service. It was like waving a red cape in front of a bull. I took it as a dare. My coworkers called me insane. My mom begged me not to. I brushed them all off. I need something real, I said. I need to test myself. So I planned a 7-day loop. Logan Pass into the northern reaches. No major trails, no backtracking. Just me, my gear, and the wild. I packed lean but efficient. Tent, bag, tiny stove, 7 days worth of dehydrated meals, water filter, knife, map, compass, GPS. No extra comfort, no fallback. That was the point. I wanted to be stripped down to the bone to see if I'd still stand tall. The morning I walked into the ranger station to log my trip, the guy at the counter looked me over like I was a lamb walking into the slaughterhouse. He asked me twice if I'd ever done anything like this solo. I lied. Told him I had. Told him I knew the risks. He went over the rules again, his voice carrying that edge of, "You're not listening." I wasn't. I was grinning, vibrating with adrenaline. I thought this was going to be the best week of my life. And for the first couple of days, it was. The first morning, I cranked out 10 miles before lunch. The sky was glass blue, the ridges sharp enough to cut your eyes. I didn't see another soul after mid-afternoon. I camped by a lake, strung up my food like the videos showed, and sat staring at water that looked like poured silver. I felt invincible. Day 2 was harder but still manageable. I climbed up toward Logan Pass, sucking wind on those endless rocky switchbacks. But the views made up for it. Patches of snow still clung to the ridges in June. Wildflowers burst between the stones, and the trail behind me stayed empty. I pitched camp by a stream that night. This is it. This is living. By day 3, my blister rubbed raw on the left heel. I lost the trail for half an hour and cursed myself stupid for it. And then, little things. Odd rock piles that didn't look natural. Scuffed patches of dirt like someone had dug there. The first real crack came near sunset when I found a foil wrapper tucked between 2 boulders. Protein bar, same brand as mine, but not a flavor I'd packed. It should have been nothing. Trash from some other hiker. But something about it made my stomach twist. Because I hadn't seen another person in 2 days. Because I was way the hell off the main trail. I told myself it was nothing, shoved the wrapper in my pack, and hiked on another half-mile before setting up camp. But when I boiled water that night, when I sat there sipping tea and letting the fire die, I kept scanning the tree line. I brushed it off. I had to. I wasn't about to let one stupid piece of trash spook me. I cleaned up, zipped into my bag, and passed out. The 4th morning broke me. When I crawled out of the tent, I noticed my mug was gone. The metal mug I always left in the same place, right on that flat granite rock by the fire ring. I scanned the ground, muttering curses. But then I saw it, 10 meters away, sitting perfectly upright on a log. Balanced, placed, deliberate. My skin went ice. I walked over and picked it up. Inside, instead of the dregs of tea, there were pine needles. Not random, arranged. Perfect concentric circles, tight and neat, like someone had spent long minutes crafting them while I slept. My stomach dropped into hell. Oh my God. Somebody had been in my camp. Somebody had stood less than 10 feet from where I lay unconscious in my bag. They had touched my stuff. They had left me a goddamn message. I checked the ground. No clear footprints. No boot prints. Just that mug and those impossible circles. I felt violated. Exposed. Naked in the middle of miles of nowhere with no one coming if I screamed. I packed in a frenzy, hands shaking. I climbed the ridge behind camp, using hands and knees to scramble over boulders. From the top, I could see for miles. The trail a faint scratch to the east, 15 miles back to the ranger outpost. And that was worse. Because whoever left that mug was down there, hidden, watching. Somebody living feral, staking out their territory? Whoever it was, they'd walked into my camp silently, arranged those circles, and vanished. The thought of spending another night out there made me want to vomit. So I bailed. I didn't care about finishing the loop. I didn't care about pride. I wanted out. The hike back was hell, 15 miles. My legs cramped so bad I had to bite my lip to keep moving. But the worst wasn't the pain. I didn't stop. I didn't drink enough. I didn't eat. Fear was my fuel, and it burned hot. By the time night fell, I kept imagining hands reaching out of the dark. A figure stepping into the beam. A knife scraping canvas, a whisper in the trees. My brain tormented me with what I couldn't see. Hours blurred. Midnight came, and finally, I saw the outline of the ranger station. I nearly collapsed, tears streaming hot down my face, my body hollowed out by terror and exhaustion. The ranger was an older guy. "You're not the first," he said. "There are people out here who don't want to be found. People who live off-grid months at a time. Sometimes they leave messages, warnings. I asked him what would have happened if I'd stayed. He didn't answer. I filled out an incident report. When the sun rose, I walked to the parking lot and drove away. I've never gone back. Last summer, I told myself I was going to fix everything with one trip. One damn trip. After weeks of stress, I needed out. Just me and the woods. Deep woods. The kind of deep where you stop seeing people by mid-morning and stop seeing even their litter by afternoon. I picked a stretch of the Appalachian Mountains few people talk about. No nearby campgrounds. Just an old trailhead carrying me into the green, dark heart of nowhere. By midday, the trees had started to shift from familiar to feral. The trail was just a scar through brush, narrow enough that branches. Sweat ran down my back, salty and hot, gluing my shirt to my skin. My thighs burned like hell under the weight of my pack. Get lost to get found, I muttered. I'd seen it on some stupid wellness post. Out here, it felt more like a curse than advice. I hiked for hours. By late afternoon, I found my spot. A clearing off to the side of a barely there trail marked by a wooden post so old. Splintered, leaning, the kind of marker hikers had probably stopped paying attention to decades ago. If no one had maintained this post in years, then nobody came out here anymore. That was exactly what I wanted. Nobody would even know I was here. I dropped my pack and started working fast. Tent pitched, stakes hammered into soil hard as iron, sleeping bag unrolled inside. My food bag hung from a low branch with a rope I could barely tie right because my fingers were slick with sweat. I moved like I was being timed because the sun was bleeding down into the trees. All I could think about was water. I'd been hiking for hours and the air felt like a wet towel thrown over my head. I just wanted to scrub the filth off and feel human again. That's when I saw through the trees, maybe 100 yards away, something pale and square crouched in the weeds. Something man-made. A squat, concrete block building. I blinked at it. Out here? It didn't make sense. A building, the bones of something. I walked toward it. The closer I got, the clearer it became. A shower house. One of those low, ugly rectangles you find at old campgrounds, built to last, but not to matter. This one was dying slow. Its door sagged, iron eaten deep red by years of rain. The windows were high and narrow. I was exhausted, sticky with sweat and grime. Curiosity and desperation dragged me inside. The only light seeped in through those high windows. A long row of mirrors faced me above. Most were spiderwebbed with fractures. I pulled my water jug from my pack, stripped down, and stood under one of the remaining spigots. A thin trickle of cold water hissed out, running over my skin like ice. I shuddered, letting it sluice off the day. Then I swear I heard the footsteps. My pulse spiked so hard. I froze, water still running over my face. The sound came again, shoes on tile, slow and unhurried. I wiped the water from my eyes. 2 women, 1 man. They weren't rangers, they weren't hikers. Their clothes were too clean. Sweaters, dark pants, boots that didn't look scuffed by trails. They muttered in some language I couldn't place. I pressed myself against the cold tile. Then, they started changing their clothes. Right there. Pulling on sweaters, lacing boots. I wanted to say something, demand who they were, why they were here. But my throat locked up. If I even breathed too loud, something terrible would happen. One of the women looked up, met my eyes in the mirror. She smiled, and then the man's eyes slid over me next. I went cold. I stumbled backward, fumbling for my towel, dragging it around me like it could protect me. But none of them stopped me. None of them spoke. I bolted. Out the door, into the trees, barefoot, not caring about rocks and branches tearing at my skin. I ran like I was being hunted, lungs burning, heart screaming in my ears. I didn't stop until my tent was in sight. I dove inside, yanked my clothes on with shaking hands, zipped the tent, and sat there in the dark, waiting. I sat cross-legged, knife in one hand, flashlight in the other, eyes wide, ears straining, convinced they were circling me. Hours crawled past, nothing but the endless night pressing against the tent walls. I didn't sleep. At dawn, and hiked back. It was the worst night of my life. I never went back into the deep alone.